Thanks, John. Yeah, yeah.
All right. So thank you, Mark, for starting the recording. Mark has included in our agenda our shared understandings that we're listening to understand, not necessarily to respond, but if you have a response or a reply, or if something excites you, we definitely hope that you contribute and that we have a wonderful and fulfilling conversation. Um, we want to say that what we share here is stays here. What we learn here is brought into the communities that we serve. This is a really great group of people. So, of course, we're going to treat one another with grace and we are going to provide and extend psychological safety to one another, that nobody's going to be embarrassed or punished or humiliated for being who you are and speaking up with your ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. And this is, yeah, we're not worried about any of those understandings being crossed or misunderstood. So we have the notes from our last meeting. Mark has included in the agenda. And those of you who may be interested in what we discussed at our last meeting, Mark has also included the previous meeting recording. So these recordings are available afterward. Tomorrow morning is our, or is this tomorrow morning? Yes, tomorrow
Mhm.
morning at 11 a.m. We will have a collection development check-in meeting. So we definitely want to invite all of you to attend that meeting. It's informal like this one. And it'll be our second meeting. We started those check-in meetings in September. And we had some really great conversations in September about, what could it look like for us to bring together people to support one another with collection development. We had ideas such as, shared book lists too. We started talking about even book challenges. So I'll be sending an agenda out for that shortly after this meeting. And I hope that you're able to attend. We did touch on inclusive services topics in that meeting too.
Great.
Any questions? Okay. I'm not going to talk the whole time. I promise that this is everybody's time. We have in the agenda that November is Native American Heritage Month. And we have some topics listed in the agenda. We have some resources that you can go to, as well as we only have a few more days until the end of this week for a webinar that Jean and I hosted in October with Debbie Reese, updating your collection, selecting and deselecting materials with native content. It is probably one of the best webinars I've attended in the last many years. We've gotten very positive comments about this workshop. Debbie really created and tailored a workshop about Indigenous literature and how to look at your current collection through the eyes of inclusion. And we only have the webinar for a month afterwards. So take a look at it if you're interested. It was youth services, but it goes beyond youth services topics. Are any of you doing anything for Native American History Heritage Month?
Not so much the library, but the Village of Wanakee just hung a Ho-Chunk flag that I think it went up this month, but I think it's going to be up permanently. Not sure, we asked if the library could have one, and I think there's still discussion about that. But I thought that was pretty neat and at least a step in doing something.
Courtney, that's great. Wouldn't that be beautiful to have it flying at the library?
Mhm.
Any others? I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah. Are there things or ideas that of possible programs or resources or even display ideas that folks have either are doing this year, want to do, or or even have just heard about that they wanted to share?
I guess I have one more thing that it doesn't really relate to November, but there's a teacher at the Wanakee High School, Tim Decora is his name. He's a member of the Ho-Chunk Nation. He is doing a program at the library in January, not related to Native Americans at all, really, but about anxiety and anxiety management. And I just think it'll be really good to, I mean, it's great that he's a member of the Ho-Chunk Nation, but it's just good to see, especially men in positions of vulnerability like that. And he's really well known in the community and the students really love him. So I think it's just good to give him an opportunity to speak about anxiety and how to manage it. And we'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm sure he'll be great, but I think he's interested in kind of doing it at other libraries if people are interested. So I plan to send out an email after his program in January, just saying how it went. And if people are interested, here's Tim's contact info. So I think that should be a pretty good program. And it's just good to see members of, minority groups that they're not always talking about, their struggles of minorities, that, they have problems that everyone else has too. So I think it'll be a good program.
That sounds great. I'll have to watch for it. I'd love to come and attend as
Definitely,
a
yeah.
participant. Okay. So looking at our agenda, these were some discussion topics that came up at our last meeting in September. The first one was, how do libraries use WhatsApp and other methods for reaching patrons? The suggestion was possibly add to needs assessment surveys. So looking for information. And if you have done it, how did you do it? How might other libraries implement it?
I think I'm the one that brought that up. I haven't done it. I'm still looking for ways to communicate with patrons who don't use traditional means and methods, of which Fitchburg has a lot of potential patrons and areas that we're still trying to figure out how to communicate with, especially after the pandemic. It's like we're reinventing everything. But I know I communicate with other people on WhatsApp, so but I have my own phone. So I think it'd be interesting if anyone has ever tried that or something different.
Mhm.
I think that's a great idea, Minda. I've certainly used WhatsApp myself, but I don't know, how much it's used within, if it's a generational thing or what. But yeah, anything you get about that, I would be very interested to learn more.
Yeah. I'm not really familiar with WhatsApp. Would someone sort of provide like kind of an idea of what it is?
I can sort of give a brief little bit overview. Mary, you can add some more. And I don't have statistics in front of me. It's a very widely used app all over the world because it uses internet connection and not your data. It's an app that you put on your phone. There's also a desktop version of it. I have seen it used with multicultural communities, very much so. It's kind of maybe like Facebook Messenger, I guess you could
Oh.
kind of compare it to that.
Yeah.
But there's a whole bunch of things you can do with it. I've helped patrons who've had the code on their phone bring it in, and then you go to a desktop computer. This is in a public library setting, not at this library, but a different library, where then they can you use this QR code and you unlock it and you can get more information. But it's just a very, if I'm ever out of the country, that's what I will use to communicate with as a messaging app versus data. I've heard of it before being used to reach other people who speak different languages and other communities. And I'm just trying to figure out how to go about doing that. Of course, then you have to add everyone in. But once you
Mhm.
have them, then you have a pipeline of people to communicate with. If anyone else wants to add, that's my broad understanding of it in terms of the under workings of it. Like I said, I just put the app on my phone and I just use it to communicate with people, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice. I know it's used very heavily abroad. I was just in Italy last week, and that was how my hotel chose to communicate with me. I've used it in Asia, just all over. It's like the standard for how people get, communicate. And it's really nice. You can see when somebody's read your mail, and yeah, it's very handy. It's really easy to use.
Okay. Neat. And is it something so folks uh are they people that you know specifically, or is it similar where you have kind of like a profile, or I guess I'm out of the loop with apps. Sorry, I just curious.
I have only used it with people I know. And that's where this is where I need to get more information. I attended a webinar on it once where it was an idea of using it. As I've said, I do know that people who are communicating often with family in other countries, Spanish speaking populations, I've seen it used quite heavily with. That's how they communicate if they're here and they still have family. The ones I were seeing, it was in Mexico, I believe. That's how they were communicating with them still. And I think they can still communicate. You can still use it in the United States as well. It's just not as heavily. I think we have other ways of communicating.
Cool.
And I think one of the things is that there's a privacy sort of insurance with it because it has the end-to-end encryption. So I think that's one of the reasons why people like it so much.
Maybe that's something that Mark and I can do a little research or see if we can find even an archived webinar similar to the one that Minda described, um, and share it out with this list, with the inclusive services folks. I've only used it personally too, and yeah, it is with people from other countries, now that I think about it. We're going to another question or topic that Minda brought up, is wondering about how libraries work together collaboratively, to meet the needs of EDI or JEDI, how to be JEDIs together and work together to meet needs. I think, we have some Dane County librarians here. Emily's in Sauk County, but brand new. And I know that her staff has worked with, other libraries in the region. Has anything come up, or do you have any questions or thoughts about how libraries might work together, and how the system can help you do that?
I can say that I was able to kind of collaborate or at least start communications with some of the Madison Public Librarians, which was really helpful for me in areas that Fitchburg boundaries and Madison connect. Literally, there are areas where we just touch completely and nobody, a patron's not going to know, oh, that's Madison, oh, that's Fitchburg. So we're trying to I'm trying to attend some different meetings to try to see how there are ways that if there's an event that someone's like Madison holds Parks Alive, for instance. That's a thing they've held all this past summer in the parks. And many times we were using the same parks, but doing different things, or we were possibly a block apart. So it's helpful for me to know when Madison is holding these events so that I can plan not to do something on the same day earlier than when they're already doing an event, or who do they know that can put me in touch as we're trying to all serve this same group of people. But we just have municipal boundaries that are separating us. So I've been able to connect with some people. So that's been really helpful. And I realize this is a more of an urban suburban possibility, but I think you can do this outside of Dane County too. If you have other communities that you are very close to that you want to try to share resources and team up together. So I've made a little bit of progress on that, and it's just going to take me a little bit of time. I do think it would be helpful if there was like a list of outreach librarians in South Central Library System, or community engagement librarians, or there are many people I think who share that role. It might be a dual role, kind of like, I think, Courtney, you said your adult services and outreach. That way, if we want to find somebody, we can contact them. Otherwise, I'm kind of trying to figure it out, going through websites and looking for contact information, or just calling the library and asking. But that might be a helpful list to have.
Thank you, Minda. That is something that Mark and I can definitely look into. I'm wondering if South Central, we already have a directory of library staff, and I'm wondering if it could be something as simple as adding that field to the directory, and then all the information would be in one place rather than, starting a second list. Thank you for bringing that up. We'll see how we go about adding that topic to the directory.
Yeah, I do remember over the pandemic, and they might still be collaborating more closely, but I recall that there were libraries in Columbia County that coordinated their virtual programs with each other, and that actually, in a way, was also I believe it also had a cost sharing piece to it, where they could have speakers using a virtual account, and also kind of work that way, so that like Minda had mentioned, so there wasn't sort of that overlap or competing events between libraries, yeah, either in-person events in the same or nearby parks, or virtual events on the same day. So, yeah.
Well, the idea of collaborating, like there's inclusivity is at the core of that, that we're not, we're not excluding our neighbors who might be just across the street, our neighbor libraries, that there is a sense of, we all belong here together, serving our community members. It makes me think about the discussions that we have a lot about quantitative versus qualitative measures, and I think funders, legislators might be interested to know and see how libraries work together, even though they're not in the same municipality. Mm. I have a lot thinking a lot about that. And the sustainability model of, sharing expenses possibly for a program, or, just sharing people power, that two libraries aren't duplicating.
Yeah, I
Linda, go
think
ahead.
people power really comes to it, especially when I know there are so many needs that if I know another library is going to be focusing on a certain need or aspect, that's great. Then I will focus on maybe something on slightly different, because then we can combine to meet more needs with more people and not duplicating each other. So those are some of the things that we think of, or just in the summer, if we're trying to get library services to children who can't get to a library, how can we do that so that we're offsetting each other, so they get more services in a span of time versus duplicating each other on the same day? We're spreading it out. So one library is doing one thing one week, I'm doing something a different week. Maybe we come together for something else. But there's those kind, and or who do you know that can help me find a resource that I can bring to my program or provide a service. Those are just really, it's almost like, then there's contacts. I've been meeting other people, being put in touch with other people. That's really helpful. Also, people that I didn't know of. And it's collaboration. It just makes sense to me. And I just think we're kind of, especially as I said, in the more urban area where we're sharing a lot of boundaries, that's really helpful to have that group of people who communicate with each other.
And what a great way of celebrating the talents and skills and experiences of our colleagues, and knowing that, all right, and then we're going to celebrate what I'm good at doing too. Once
Mhm.
again, it's very sustainable. If you're working on something that you like doing, and know that you're working in partnership or in tandem with others, there's some joy in that.
Yeah, it's also just good to find other people to talk to, just to see what they're experiencing. Or, it's always nice. You have all your colleagues within your own library, but it's nice to be able to have, all those conversations with people who are just right next door to you. Or we share school districts with 3 other libraries because we don't have our own. So we do there's a lot of overlap. So I really enjoy talking to librarians from other libraries. I'm like, oh, are you reaching this part of Fitchburg? Okay, that's good to know. I'm glad you're there. Then I'll try to tackle a different part. It's kind of things like that.
And I think rural school districts, communities in rural school districts can relate to that too, where, there is a combined or a shared school district for smaller communities. That's very common. I think this is something to, continually think about, like how can we, or how can South Central or this group, how can we foster that?
This is not totally related, but kind of loose. Just a plug for the adult programmers SCLS group. Yeah, we meet, I think probably the same every other month too, I believe. We just met like last week, I think, but it's a pretty robust group because I feel like I've been at Wanakee 5 years, and I feel like the group has been going for at least that long. And yeah, Jean does a great job of taking notes, and I always come away with not necessarily outreach ideas, but definitely programming ideas. And if I feel like, if somewhere super close, like DeForest is doing something, maybe I'll try to tweak it a little bit to get people to come to that. But I find that even we're close to Middleton, but I find that it seems like patrons kind of stay within their community unless it's for like a really big program or event. So I definitely copy what other libraries are doing if it's successful. And yeah, I just wanted to throw in a plug for that group because I always just walk away feeling very motivated after those meetings.
Thanks, Courtney.
I do have a question that would involve Mary and Sean. I don't know when is the appropriate time to ask that, but you guys, okay. So I've talked with Mary a little bit about this, Sean. I think I sent you an email, but I'm not sure. I have to go back and look. Trying to compile resources for people who are caregivers of those with memory loss, whether it's early stage memory loss or beginning Alzheimer's, just to let people know. Mary was really helpful in providing authors of books for people who are experiencing early stage memory loss, as reading is one of the last things they can still do. This came in response to asking about some books for someone who had suffered a stroke and was trying to learn to read again. But I am interested in knowing, one of the things I wasn't sure about, I know there's memory kits in South Central Library System, aside from what Dane County Library Service offers, but I'm not sure what all can be checked out. I don't want to be like, oh, hey, go look in the catalog and you can find memory kits. My library doesn't have them, but other libraries do. I'm not sure how much of those kinds of resources are, one, findable in the catalog for most patrons, unless they know what to search, and then what kind of resources we can share that are available that people can gain access to. I definitely think there's an interest in finding those kinds of resources for caregivers, for the people that they're watching out for, whether it's family members or friends who have memory loss.
Thanks for bringing that up. I think, so South Central, we don't have kits that we own that you could like contact me and say, hey, can I borrow this next week? But a few years ago, I got some money and I purchased some materials that I think live at Portage. So I will follow up with you on that. And I think those are the bifocal kits, if you're familiar with those. I know that Mary probably is much more familiar with the bifocal kits than I am, but the idea, and please Mary help me out, is each one of these bifocal, and it's FOLKAL, like folk, is on a theme, like, cooking from the 1950s, and the kit has maybe some books that show pictures of cooking from the 50s. I don't know if there's any realia in there. I'm going to stop talking because I'm not sure, and you all probably know more about it than I do.
Yep, you're right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, they usually have, things to touch and feel, and, like DVDs about the thematic, whatever the theme is. I know that bifocal doesn't exist anymore. It was taken over by, I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's maternally. I'm not really sure how they pronounce it, but they've taken over like a chunk of the bifocal, kind of updating things and keeping them fresh. Dade County, we do have our thematic kits that they're hidden in the catalog, and we send them out to our nursing homes, senior centers, adult daycare centers. It's one of those things. It's like if people found out about them, they would want them, and I wouldn't have any for my nursing homes, because we serve a ton of places, and we want to make sure that we always have materials that will go out to those activity directors, life enrichment coordinators. So we do kind of keep them hidden in the system. Occasionally someone will request one, like they were an activity director somewhere and they remember a certain kit and they'll ask for it, and and I'll let them check it out for sure. But the kits, and I've created a lot of them myself, just with my own, through grants. They have a ton of stuff in them, and I think the CERC staff would just fall over if they had to check that stuff in. That's another thing. So yeah. I don't know, Minda, have you contacted the ADRC? I know that they have materials there that for support for caregivers for people with memory loss.
I have not yet. And I can certainly do that. I was just trying to let my senior center know of the resources that were available through libraries. in terms of, because they have they'll host they just hosted a program recently about coping with early diagnosis of early, memory loss and how to deal with it. It was for caregivers. And I think there were between 17 and 18 people who attended. So it really shows that they're looking for resources. So I was just trying to compile some resources in case they were looking for some help and what can the library provide. But I can certainly contact the ADRC also. I just was, besides the books, I didn't know if there were anything else within South Central that people could potentially check out. And I totally understand about yours being hidden for the nursing homes. I get that.
Thank you so much.
Oh yeah. And checking all that in. Well, yes, all the pieces.
It's like, I have it hidden. Yeah, and I know I was just talking to ADRC a little while ago, and just kind of connecting about memory cafes to see if they've bounced back, and as they were not, it was not a thumbs up kind of thing, and the memory cafes didn't really bounce back quite so much after COVID. So hopefully those there'll be a resurgence of them soon, because those I know were very, very helpful for a lot of people in that community.
So now that you bring that up, maybe you can let me know a little bit about the history of those in Dane County. The system I came from, Bridges Library System, has a really robust network of library memory cafes. I'm a trained facilitator. I did those in Bridges, but when with Dane County, it doesn't seem that libraries have taken that on as much. It seems like it's been more like the Alzheimer's organizations or the ADRC. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah. And in fact, I had an LSTA grant that was approved to bring memory cafes to libraries to try them out to see if they would work in their community. And then it was not funded. I mean, it was approved. I was supposed to get the money, and then they decided not to fund it. I'm not really sure. So we tried. We gave it a try. But yeah, it does seem like it was a little more disparate here in Dane County. Various agencies sort of took on memory cafes, and but it was not necessarily library driven. And I'm so happy to hear that you were a trained facilitator for those, because those are just wonderful. Maybe we can connect over that.
And in the system in general, the other 6 counties, what I've seen in my work is that libraries have often been the host sites for other agencies that facilitate the memory cafes. So the librarian may not be the one who's trained as the facilitator, but they work with another community organization who does it. And the library, publicizes it and everything. And yeah, I think before COVID, we were starting to look at things. I think Mary and I even had a couple of conversations, but of how can we let South Central folks know, more about memory cafes. Minda, since you're a trained facilitator, would you be interested in doing not a sample program, could we participate? Anybody who's interested, could you run a memory cafe for us maybe sometime in 2023 so we can experience what it's like as participants?
It's a possibility. Once again, like I said, I was trying to figure out here how they if they existed and who ran them and who hosts them. But yeah, I mean, I think even I could do it. I had done, how many did I do? I think I did 2 before I left. The way Bridges has it, it's a really good system. They rotate the memory cafes among a consortium of libraries, so that the library isn't the same library, except for I think Waukesha isn't doing one every month. So they broke up the whole system into these little mini groups of about 3 or 4 libraries, and then they take turns rotating.
Yeah.
So within a geographic area of where the library is only 15 to 20 minutes apart. So it's really nice, because then people can just like go to Verona, and then to Fitchburg, and then to Oregon, and then to Middleton, and then back to Fitchburg. It really was a nice way of sharing. And Angela Myers at Bridges Library System is in charge, and she does a wonderful job. She's kind of really the the right person to talk to. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I'll talk to Angela because you have too much on your plate.
yeah. I
I'm
would say that,
sorry.
yeah, if you
I get
wanted,
so excited.
yeah, if you wanted to try that kind of a model, she would be a great person to do, to let you know how it works.
I have a question. How does one become certified to do that? And maybe would that be something that would be worth hosting, is getting a bunch of us certified? Um,
So this was a system-wide initiative. So Angela helped coordinate the training along with the aid. I'm trying to remember. I think ADRC and the Alzheimer's organization was involved. It started with becoming a dementia-friendly librarian, which is through our training was through the ADRC. For that, our whole library became a dementia-friendly, which was really great because it extends to every person who works in the library, really, because there's so many instances where you're dealing with people who have dementia, and understanding what they're going through really helps you become such a better customer service response, and all the empathy that's involved with helping people who may be experiencing dementia. But yeah, and once again, Angela would have all that information. They have a really robust system. But yeah, it could be, it's kind of a process. It does, I think it takes quite a few trainings and years and months of working up to that kind of system. And it's hard because would it be as well received post-pandemic as it was pre-pandemic? I don't know. Is it even worth something starting over again? I'm not sure either, but I was just trying to kind of get the pulse of how and where the memory cafes were offered within South Central and Dane County.
I think that's something that we can definitely follow up on. I'm really curious about that too. I love just the model of memory cafes, and if there's librarians who are interested in hosting them or supporting that work, I think it's definitely like a systems role that we can help people connect with training resources and that type of thing. And also your reference to just um, what are caregivers looking for? What resources are out there for caregivers? It's been a while since I've worked on any dementia or Alzheimer's or memory cafe type project. So this might be a 2023 focus for us at the system.
Yeah, I think one other thing to note is that the way that librarians as memory cafe facilitators, it's really a collaborative project. Although I facilitated, I had a lot of help from other people. There were always 2 or 3 other people who were helping.
Yeah.
One was a librarian from another library. Another was someone from ADRC, usually I had people from the senior center helping. So although I didn't do it all myself, it was something that you really had a lot of help with. And I know for caregivers providing information for caregivers, it may be more unique to Fitchburg just because we have a Grace and we have a couple of adult day facilities in our community where I think people are just really aware of trying to provide resources.
Yeah, Wanakee is kind of, just to give you an update on where Wanakee is, there's a Wanakee dementia friendly coalition that I'm on that has run our memory cafes, and they had a very robust group pre-COVID, and then we shut down for about 6 months, and then even post-COVID we had some pretty good numbers, but now it's dwindled down to nothing. There's been some deaths, some people have moved away, and it's just hard to get people out. So they've actually stopped doing memory cafes for the last couple months. They were doing them monthly. And it was just a group of volunteers. I mean, I was on the coalition to advise, as well as some people from the senior center were on there, but it was just a great group of volunteers. And occasionally they would meet at the library to have a library centered program. They would always pick a theme or whatever. Sometimes it would be holiday related, whatever it was going on. But yeah, it's kind of disappointing that I hope not dwindled away forever, but definitely in winter months, it's taken a hit. And maybe we're gonna see if in the spring, if we start up again, if people start coming again.
Yeah, as I look outside and it's snowing, thinking about how a memory cafe might be more complicated just for people to get to in those colder months, as Courtney mentioned.
Thanks, Courtney. That's more information than I knew before, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if there's some members in our group that are definitely linked in with the other groups, and I know, like, I'm not even sure if Middleton has restarted. DeForest might have just recently restarted, but they've been shut down for 2 years or so. So Wanakee was going strong for a while, but yeah, now even we've like taken a back seat.
Okay. We, in our final 12 minutes, I propose that maybe we jump to the inclusive services round robin. We'd love to hear other things that you're doing or that you're thinking about, or questions that you have. What are you excited about? What's on your minds?
I
I
can,
could.
oh, sorry, go, no, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, I was just, real quick. I was just gonna say traditionally the Wanakee Library has been open on Martin Luther King Day, but last year they declared it a holiday in the village, so we were closed last year. But there were so many people, mostly teenagers, because it's a study day, right before finals, that thought the library was open and came. So this year we're going to be open. It seems like we're going to be open from here on out, but we want to be a study space, but also we wanted to offer some sort of DEI programming, whether it's related to MLK directly or not. But I am having such a hard time finding a speaker. I know that DEI is like, the thing right now. So a lot of people are booked. I reached out to a couple UW professors, and either I'm just not getting responses, or I've had a couple people tell me they're booked. So I would love if there's any suggestions that anyone has for a speaker you think would be good. I'd prefer it to be a person of color. But it doesn't have to be. I mean, we're hoping to offer some sort of programming. We're going to be open either way. But yeah, I'd like to offer something that kind of honors the holiday a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of something new we're trying next year.
So I know it's probably not exactly what you're thinking, Courtney, but like, what if you did some kind of like interactive thing where people could like post, like write out a note or like talk about something. I mean, it's not what you're looking for exactly, but
I like that though. That's cool.
yeah, I mean, that it's a germ of an idea, but like
Yeah.
I think there might be something kind of fun and a little bit different. And then, if you can't find the speaker at the end of the day, like at least you have something that you can kind of sort of connect and get people thinking.
For sure. Yeah. Maybe buy a display or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
Yeah. So perhaps something like if they're I know I've seen it done for Wisconsin vets from World War II. There are traveling displays. And perhaps there's a program in Wisconsin or nationally that has an MLK traveling display.
That's a great idea. I should really look into that like today.
What I like about that idea, and Emily, thanks for bringing it up,
Mhm.
is like, what can you do with all of that data that you collect? What types of information can you get from that interactive activity? Could you, get ideas for future programs, for future, lectures or speakers, or even get some direction for strategic planning or planning for future services? I love interactive stuff. I think it's so It's so powerful, and it points back to what your community members want. How are things going in Spring Green, Emily?
Things are going well. I think this is week 3, so I'm still learning a lot. But yeah, this was super helpful. I'm really glad that I came today, and yeah, you all got me thinking about stuff. I'm, still trying to kind of get my bearings, I guess, and then from there kind of start to do some programming. So I will be the adult services programmer for the library as well as the director. So just trying to, kind of get some of that stuff on the calendar and hearing what the staff think we need and I'm trying to meet with some of the board members, hearing what they think we need, so just trying to get that direction and sort of go from there.
Well, we're glad that you're here.
Thanks, Sean.
I just remembered a few weeks ago, I was at Lutefisk Supper in Western Wisconsin with my family, and I connected with a family friend who does a lot of work with dairy farmers who hire immigrant workers, or sometimes even, I don't know if they're undocumented workers for the dairy industry. And there's a woman named Ruth Conniff from Madison. She's written for the Progressive magazine, and she's done a lot of I got a connection to a possible presenter. That's what I'm trying to say, to a possible presenter who might be interested in presenting at local public libraries. She's in Madison and would be interested in talking about the topic of, Mexican workers in Wisconsin dairy farms. And I just heard her on the radio yesterday on WART, and it reminded me that I need to follow up. But I was going to send this to Jean for the adult services programming folks, but there is some EDI and inclusive services topics within that too. So I will get that information out. Ruth she's been around. She's a writer and a good speaker, and might be something, especially in the rural areas, that might be of interest.
Yeah, that sounds really cool, Sean. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anything else? Any other questions you have for one another? We'll go back to we're always talking about how do we make those connections and how do we build trust with community members and agencies. Has anybody had some good luck or success in the last couple of months in creating that trust or in reaching out to new agencies? Okay. I'm sure we'll be coming back to that topic. Before we sign off, Mark, do you want to, let's see, we are at our final topic, is this a good time? Is 11 o'clock on the third or fourth Tuesday every other month? Is this a good time? Is it working for you? Mary says yes.
Yep, for me too, yeah.
Works for
Okay.
me.
Where do you post like the minutes and the recordings after it's over? That's the one thing I didn't know where
Yeah.
that went.
Yeah. I generally I post them as an through I link them to an email that I send out. We have a and I can get you the link, Minda, a link to the Inclusive Services email list that SCLS hosts. And then I also send it through, or at least I try to. I'll write a note for this meeting to send it also through the adult the different email lists, the adult programming reference, and the youth and teen lists. So I'll send it through that along with a link to the recording and the notes. And I'll include this question just in that follow-up email so we can get some input just to make sure that our meeting times and dates are working for folks.
Yeah, so I don't think I'm on the inclusive services list. I might not have seen where to sign up for that one. So
Yeah,
if you can tell me, the other ones I'm not part of because I serve all ages, so I tend not to subscribe to every list there
sure.
is. Although
Yeah.
I could, but yeah.
Yep. Yep. Actually, let's see. I can show you where to find the e-lists. Let's see. So they're just, oh goodness. Sorry, Zoom's being funny.
Or I can just give you my email. That might be the
Sure.
Yeah, we
easier
could just
way.
add you.
Yeah.
We'll just
Okay.
add you to the
I remember
list.
I was in that, wherever that was at one point, trying to figure out which ones to sign up for. But I'll
Yeah.
just put my email in the chat here.
Okay, sounds great. I'll get you that link right away.
And then we'll add you. The other thing, and I'm thinking about this with the youth services meetings too, is we're really looking at, or I'm looking at the websites that I manage. And I know the youth services website really needs a overhaul and a place to post our meeting notes and meeting recordings. We have an outreach services page, so maybe that's a place where we could post the recordings.
Mm-hmm.
So you can find it on the website, and we'll send updates about that to the different email lists.
Yeah,
when
I'm
things are
familiar with that
updated.
page. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Then you're not dependent on the email. So I feel like Mark and I have a couple of things that we're reacting to, and things that we can hopefully put into place before we meet again in January. It'll be here before we know it.
Yeah. Yep. I don't believe we have a date set for the January meeting, but we'll get something on the calendar soon.
We can maybe talk about that tomorrow, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, everyone. Well, it's noon. I hope that you have a great day. I hope that you take some time for yourself right now and nourish yourself, get some lunch or take a walk or do whatever you need to do to practice some compassion toward yourself and all the great work that we're doing together. All right. Thank you. And
Thank
we'll see you
you.
next time.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye, everyone.